Here's a psychological fact you're not ready for. If you're hard to manipulate, you probably don't even realize it. Psychologists call this cognitive resistance, and it's the ability of your mind to not bend just because someone wants you to be different. And once you understand these 7 signs, you're going to see why you act the way you act in your relationships, at work, and even with your family. Before we dive in, let's talk about what manipulation actually is. When we think of manipulation, we imagine villains or abusive partners. But manipulation exists on a spectrum. It's not always malicious. Sometimes people manipulate without even knowing they're doing it. Manipulation, at its core, is any attempt to influence someone's behavior, thoughts, or emotions in a way that serves the manipulator's interests while bypassing your authentic decision-making process. The scary part? We're all surrounded by it. Advertising is manipulation. Social media algorithms are designed to manipulate your attention. Your well-meaning parents might have used guilt. Your friends might use peer pressure. Your partners might use emotional withdrawal. It's everywhere. And the people who are hardest to manipulate have developed certain psychological traits that make them resistant to these tactics. Sign number 1. You don't swallow anything just because. You never accept information without questioning it. You don't do it out of rebellion. You don't do it to be contrary. You do it because your brain needs logic and coherence before saying yes. Your mind thinks, if something doesn't add up, I don't accept it. And this drives manipulative people absolutely crazy, because their entire strategy depends on you accepting their version of reality without examination. When most people receive information, especially from authority figures or people they trust, they have a tendency toward what psychologists call confirmation bias and authority bias. But you've developed an immunity to these biases. You have a calibrated skepticism. You ask questions like, who benefits from me believing this? What evidence supports this claim? Does this align with what I've observed in reality? These questions happen so automatically in your mind that you might not even notice you're doing it. But other people notice. They notice that you don't just nod along. They notice that you pause, think, and sometimes push back. And here's where it gets psychologically complex. This trait often develops from being lied to or deceived in a significant way earlier in your life. That betrayal taught your brain a crucial lesson. Words don't always match reality. Your brain created a protective mechanism. Verify before trusting. Manipulative people hate this about you because manipulation requires what researchers call cognitive ease, the state where your brain accepts information without much effort. When you make people work for your agreement, when you make them prove their points, when you make them face your questions, their manipulation tactics fall apart under examination. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Being hard to manipulate doesn't just mean you're mentally strong. It also means some people may perceive you as intimidating without you doing anything. This happens because your cognitive resistance creates a mirror effect. When someone is around a person they can't easily influence, it forces them to confront their own authenticity. If they're used to using charm or social games to navigate relationships, and those things don't work on you, they feel exposed. So they project that discomfort onto you, labeling you as intimidating, when really what's happening is that you're triggering their own insecurity about being genuine. Sign number 2. You're not afraid to say no. Most people say yes out of fear of looking bad, to avoid conflict, or out of guilt. But not you. You say no when something doesn't seem fair, when it doesn't suit you, or when it simply gives you bad vibes. And here's the psychological part. Your brain has learned that your peace of mind is worth more than pleasing others. This destroys any manipulation attempt based on social pressure. From an evolutionary perspective, humans are social creatures who survived by being part of groups. Being rejected from the group meant death in our ancestral environment. So our brains developed powerful mechanisms to avoid social rejection. When we say no, especially to people we care about, our brains sometimes register it as a threat to our social belonging. Most people, when faced with this discomfort, cave. They say yes when they mean no. They agree to things they don't want to do. And manipulators know this. They exploit it ruthlessly. They use guilt. After everything I've done for you, you won't do this one thing for me. They use social pressure. Everyone else is doing it. They use obligation. You owe me. But you've developed what psychologists call distress tolerance. You can tolerate the discomfort of saying no. You can sit with the anxiety of potentially disappointing someone. You've learned that the temporary discomfort of saying no is far less painful than the long-term resentment and self-betrayal that comes from saying yes when you mean no. Sign number 3. You detect inconsistencies in seconds. Someone says one thing but does another. They promise you something but don't deliver. They speak to you with affection, but their actions wear you down. Most people don't notice these contradictions until it's too late. You do. Your mind registers patterns, compares behaviors, and detects changes in tone, intensity, or intention. And you don't need to confront the person to know something's wrong. You simply sense it. This is rooted in what neuroscientists call pattern recognition. Your brain is constantly processing enormous amounts of information. Verbal communication, body language, tone of voice, timing, context, historical behavior. Most of this processing happens unconsciously. But people with high cognitive resistance have particularly well-developed pattern recognition systems. When someone communicates with you, they're sending multiple signals simultaneously. Most people focus primarily on the content, the words being said, but you're processing all channels simultaneously. And when there's a mismatch between channels, your brain flags it. Someone says, "I'm not angry," in a harsh tone with clenched fists. Someone says, "I'll definitely do that," but their history shows they never follow through. Your brain catches these inconsistencies and stores them. Here comes the painful part. Most people don't want you to think for yourself. They want you to be predictable. They want you to be compliant. They want you to say yes even when you don't want to. That's why, when you don't fall for manipulations, some people may call you difficult, harsh, or cold. But in reality, what's happening is they can't control you. Let's sit with this uncomfortable truth. When someone calls you difficult because you set a boundary, they're really saying, "Your boundary is difficult for me because I want you to do something you don't want to do." When someone calls you cold because you don't respond to their emotional manipulation, they're really saying, "You won't let me use guilt to influence you, and I don't know how else to get what I want." Sign number 4. You don't emotionally depend on anyone. Manipulation works best with people who suffer from people-pleasing, with people who need approval, with people who are afraid of being alone. Not you. You don't fall apart if someone walks away. You don't sacrifice your values to be liked. You don't sell yourself cheap for empty compliments. And here's something important. Your emotional independence doesn't mean you don't love people. It means you don't need anyone to feel complete. And manipulative people hate that. Emotional dependence is when your emotional state is primarily determined by someone else's feelings, opinions, or behaviors toward you. It's when you feel happy because they're happy with you, and devastated when they're upset with you. It's when their criticism sends you into a spiral of self-doubt, and their praise makes you feel worthy. But you've developed what psychologists call secure attachment. You know, at a deep level, that you're okay on your own. You enjoy connection. You value relationships. You love people. But you don't need any specific person to feel whole. Your sense of self is internal, not dependent on external validation. This shows up in tangible ways. When someone is upset with you, you can consider whether their perspective has merit without immediately accepting that you're wrong. When someone threatens to leave, you can evaluate whether the relationship is healthy rather than panicking. When someone withdraws affection, you don't chase them. You notice the manipulation tactic and often distance yourself further. This is psychological freedom, and it's threatening to manipulative people because their primary tools don't work on you. They can't use the silent treatment to punish you. You actually enjoy the silence. They can't use love bombing to make you overlook red flags. They can't use threats of abandonment to control you. You know you'll be okay either way. Sign number 5. Your silence makes manipulators uncomfortable. There are people who try to provoke you to react. They want you to lose control. They want you to justify yourself. They want you to explain your emotions so they can have them in their hands. But not you. When you don't like something, you stay silent. You observe, analyze, wait. And that silence is unbearable for many, because manipulation needs an emotional reaction. If you don't react, they have no power. In communication theory, when you stay silent, you break the communication cycle. You leave the other person hanging in uncertainty. Someone says something hurtful, and they wait for you to either defend yourself or attack back. If you defend yourself, they can poke holes in your defense. If you attack back, they can play victim. But if you simply remain silent, they don't know what to do. Your silence forces them to sit with their own behavior. When they insult you and you don't react, they're left with their own cruelty echoing in the space between you. When they try to start a fight and you refuse to participate, the fight doesn't happen, and they can't blame you. This ability comes from emotional regulation. Your brain has learned to create space between stimulus and response. Instead of immediately reacting from your emotional brain, you engage your prefrontal cortex. You think, what are they trying to accomplish here? What serves me best in this moment? And often, the answer is silence. Sign number 6. You trust your gut over external validation. While most people look outside themselves for confirmation that they're right, you've learned to trust your inner compass. You don't need 3 people to agree with you, to know what you know. You don't poll your friends to make decisions. This frustrates manipulators because they rely on creating doubt in your mind. They want you to second-guess yourself so they can step in and guide you their way. But when you're anchored in your own judgment, their seeds of doubt don't take root. This is about locus of control. People with an external locus of control believe that their life is controlled by external forces, other people's opinions, luck, circumstances. People with an internal locus of control believe they have agency over their life. When it comes to validation and decision-making, you have an internal locus. You validate yourself. When someone tells you that you're remembering something wrong, you trust your memory. When someone tells you your feelings are irrational, you trust that your feelings are valid. When someone tells you you're overreacting, you trust your assessment. This doesn't mean you think you're always right. It means you've claimed authority over your own experience. From a neurological standpoint, when you trust your gut, You're trusting sophisticated processing that happens in your unconscious mind. Your brain is constantly recognizing patterns and generating insights. Sometimes these emerge as intuition, a feeling you can't immediately explain rationally. Research shows that this intuitive knowing is often accurate. Sign number 7. You've learned to recognize love bombing and false urgency. When someone showers you with excessive praise out of nowhere, you don't get swept away. When someone creates artificial deadlines to pressure your decisions, you don't panic. Your brain has developed a detector for these tactics. You know the difference between genuine kindness and strategic flattery. You recognize when someone's rushing you because they don't want you to think clearly, and instead of feeling flattered or pressured, you feel cautious. Love bombing is when someone overwhelms you with affection, attention, and praise early in a relationship to create intense emotional attachment quickly. It feels amazing, but you've learned to recognize the signs. It happens too fast. It's excessive. And critically, it's followed by devaluation. Once you're hooked, the praise stops and criticism begins. Your brain has learned to be suspicious of excessive praise, especially early on. Instead of thinking, wow, they really like me, you think, why are they trying so hard? Instead of getting swept up, you maintain perspective. False urgency is when someone creates artificial time pressure to force you to make a decision before you're ready. This offer is only available today. I need to know right now. This tactic bypasses your rational thinking and triggers your fear of missing out. But when someone tries to rush you, it triggers suspicion rather than panic. You think, why don't they want me to have time to think? If this is genuinely a good opportunity, why can't it wait? And often, you simply say, I don't make decisions under pressure. All of this happens for one key psychological reason. Your brain prioritizes autonomy over approval. Your mind doesn't let itself be controlled because it learned through experience, pain, or maturity that emotional stability comes from within, not from outside. We are social creatures who need connection and approval, but we're also individuals who need freedom and autonomy. For most people, when these needs conflict, approval wins. They sacrifice autonomy to maintain approval. But you've made a different choice. You've decided that your autonomy is non-negotiable. This is not selfishness. This is self-preservation. This is psychological health. Because the alternative, constant self-abandonment to please others, leads to resentment, depression, and lost identity. Your brain has learned that true emotional stability comes from living in alignment with your values, from honoring your boundaries, from being true to yourself even when it costs you. Here's the truth you've been avoiding. Being hard to manipulate isn't luck. It's an acquired skill. And if you don't have it yet, you can develop it. If you want to break the cycle of allowing others to influence your behavior too much, start with this. Set clear boundaries, even if they make people uncomfortable. Boundaries are how you teach people how to treat you. Start small. Say no to one thing you'd normally say yes to out of obligation. Don't over-explain. Manipulative people use your words against you. Practice saying, that doesn't work for me. I'm not comfortable with that. No, thank you. These complete sentences require no justification. Listen more than you speak. Manipulation needs emotional noise. By listening more, you give yourself space to observe and understand what's really happening. Make a pause before responding. Time is your best shield. When someone asks for something or creates pressure, say, let me think about that and get back to you. This gives your rational mind time to engage. Trust your intuitions. If something doesn't feel right, it isn't. Your gut feeling is sophisticated processing based on pattern recognition and experience. When you get that sense of unease, pay attention. And remember, true mental strength isn't in intimidating others, but in not allowing anyone to control your mind. If this video helped you understand yourself a little more, give it a like so it reaches someone who might need it more than you. And if you want an episode on how to detect manipulators in seconds, just ask for it in the comments.